Be me Femanon, 28, working a soulless HR job. My life outside of work revolves around three things: my cat, Netflix, and my squad. The squad consists of me, Jessica, Maya, and Lauren. We've been best friends since college. Our bond was forged in the fires of cheap vodka, finals week meltdowns, and a shared, profound, all-encompassing disillusionment with the entire male gender. Our primary group activity is what we call wine and wine night. Every Friday, we gather at one of our apartments, armed with a bottle of a cheap but respectable Sauvignon Blanc. The ritual is always the same: we pour the wine, we get comfortable on the couch, and then we unleash the litany of grievances. It's a symphony of sighs, eye rolls, and a chorus of "men are trash." For years, this was my sanctuary. It was validating. It was comforting. In our little echo chamber, we weren't the problem. Our perpetual singledom wasn't a reflection of us. It was a global pandemic of male inadequacy. Jessica is the leader of the pack. She's a paralegal, sharp and cynical. Her dating criteria is a legendary document, a mythical scroll of impossible standards. He has to be over 6'2". He has to earn six figures, pre-tax, obviously. He must have a master's degree but not be an arrogant intellectual. He needs to be emotionally available but not clingy. He should have a rescue dog, but it can't be a pit bull. The list goes on. She's been on 1,000 first dates and 0 second ones. Another one bites the dust, she'd announce, deleting a guy's number with theatrical flair. He used the wrong "you're" in a text. I can't build a future with a man who is functionally illiterate. And we'd all nod sagely, taking a sip of wine. You dodged a bullet, Maya would say. Maya is the free spirit. She's a graphic designer with a septum piercing and a rotating cast of what she calls low-stakes entanglements. She complains that men only want her for sex, but she exclusively matches with guys on Tinder whose profiles consist of a single shirtless gym selfie. "Ugh, he asked me to hang out after 10 p.m., she'd groan. "Can you believe the audacity? Do I look like a booty call?" This coming from the woman who once ghosted a guy after 3 dates because he asked to define the relationship. "I can't be caged, you guys," she had said, dead serious. "I need a man who understands my untamable energy." We all agreed. Her energy was indeed untamable. Lauren is the romantic, or so she claims. She binge-watches Hallmark movies and cries at proposal videos on YouTube. She wants the fairytale, the grand gestures, the sweeping romance. Her latest heartbreak was a guy named Tom. He was a perfectly nice accountant. He took her on actual dates. He remembered the name of her childhood pet. He brought her soup when she was sick. She dumped him after a month. The reason? "He's boring," she'd whined, picking at a loose thread on her sweater. "He's too predictable. There's no spark, no drama. You deserve passion," Jessica had declared, topping off Lauren's glass. "You deserve a man who sets your soul on fire, not one who helps you file your taxes." And me. I was the quiet observer, the loyal foot soldier in their army of bitterness. My own dating life was a series of fizzled-out Tinder conversations and awkward coffee dates. I'd internalize their rhetoric. I'd go into dates like a detective, magnifying glass in hand, searching for the fatal flaw, the microscopic red flag that would justify my preemptive rejection. He chewed his food too loudly. He was too nice. His shirt was wrinkled. I was an expert at finding reasons to say no. Our collective bitterness was a fortress. It kept us safe from disappointment, from vulnerability, from the terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, the problem wasn't just them. The first brick fell out of my fortress wall when I switched departments at work. I moved from the dreary dungeons of HR to the slightly less dreary world of corporate communications. And I met David. David was different. He wasn't a 6'2" demigod with a trust fund. He was 5'10", wore glasses, and had a slightly goofy laugh. He was an IT guy. He was also the kindest, most genuine person I had ever met. He remembered I liked oat milk in my coffee. He'd send me funny memes about our boss. He once spent his entire lunch break helping me fix a spreadsheet I had hopelessly mangled. There were no games, no mixed signals. He was just nice. When he asked me out, my first instinct, conditioned by years of wine, was to find an excuse. An IT guy. I could hear Jessica's voice in my head. Honey, no. But something made me say yes. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the way he smiled when I finally fixed my spreadsheet. Our first date was normal. We went to a pub. We had burgers. We talked for 3 hours. He asked me questions about my life and actually listened to the answers. He talked about his passion for building custom keyboards and his volunteer work at an animal shelter. He was passionate. He was interesting. He was a good man. When the bill came, he paid without making a big deal about it. As he walked me to my car, I was bracing myself for the awkward lunge, the presumptive goodnight kiss. Instead, he just smiled. I had a really nice time tonight, Anon. I'd love to do it again sometime if you're up for it. I went home and I didn't feel the usual post-date anxiety or the need to immediately dissect it with the squad. I just felt happy. I made the mistake of mentioning David at the next wine and wine night. I kept it casual. So I went on a date this week. 3 pairs of eyes snapped to me. Spill, Jessica demanded, leaning forward like a predator. I told them about David. I tried to focus on the positives. He was kind, he was funny, he had a stable job. The interrogation began. What does he do? Jessica asked. He's an it, a barely suppressed scoff. Okay. And how tall is he? I don't know, 5'10". Jessica and Maya exchanged a look. A short king, Maya snickered. What does he drive? Lauren chimed in. A Toyota Camry, I think. Oh, honey, Lauren said, her voice dripping with pity. A Camry? That's such a dad car. Does he at least have a good sense of style? Maya asked, eyeing my sweater as if it were evidence of my own failing taste. He dresses fine. He's not a fashion model. Red flag, Jessica declared, slamming her wine glass down for emphasis. A man who doesn't take pride in his appearance has no self-respect. It's a slippery slope, Anon. First, it's a wrinkled shirt. Next, he's leaving his toenail clippings on the coffee table. They spent the next hour systematically dismantling this man they had never met. They weren't happy for me. They were threatened. My potential happiness was a crack in their collective misery. It was a betrayal of our unspoken pact to remain single and bitter together. I left that night feeling defensive and confused. Were they right? Was I settling? Was I so desperate for a man that I was ignoring a parade of crimson flags? I kept seeing David, and the more time I spent with him, the more I realized how distorted my friend's view of the world was. David wasn't boring. He was stable. He wasn't a short king. He was a man of average height who didn't have a personality complex about it. His Toyota Camry wasn't a red flag. It was a reliable, practical car owned by a financially responsible adult. The things my friends saw as deal breakers were actually green flags. They were signs of a normal, well-adjusted human being. My perspective shift cast my friends' lives in a harsh, unflattering new light. I started to see the hypocrisy I had been blind to for years. One Friday, Maya was on a tirade about a guy who had ghosted her after 2 dates. It's so disrespectful, she fumed. Men have no communication skills. Just be a grown-up and tell me you're not interested. This was the same Maya who, just 2 weeks prior, had been bragging about how she'd ghosted a guy because he had weird thumbs. His thumbs were just too short and stubby, she'd explained, demonstrating with her own. I can't have that image in my head for the rest of my life. We had all laughed. Now I just felt a sick sense of unease. Then there was Lauren, who was complaining that no one was making grand, romantic gestures for her anymore. Chivalry is dead, she sighed dramatically. No one even opens a car door for you these days. I remembered a story she'd told us a few months back. A guy had brought her flowers on their first date. Her reaction. It was so cringe, she'd said, rolling her eyes. It felt so performative, like he was trying too hard. It gave me the ick. They wanted the fairy tale, but they mocked any man who dared to try and create it. They wanted a knight in shining armor, but they'd complain that the armor was out of season. The biggest eye-opener was Jessica. She had briefly dated a guy who, by all accounts, met most of her impossible criteria. He was a doctor. He was tall, he was conventionally attractive, but she broke it off after a few weeks. Her reasoning was a masterclass in self-sabotage. "He's too perfect," she'd said, her voice a low whisper. "It feels suspicious. Like, what's the catch? No one is that great. He's probably a secret serial killer or something." It was then that I realized the truth. Jessica didn't want a man. She wanted a project. She wanted someone to fix, someone to complain about. A happy, stable relationship would leave her with nothing to say on wine and wine night. It would strip her of her identity as the perpetually wronged, hypercritical singleton. Her bitterness wasn't a shield, it was a cage. And she had built it herself. My relationship with David was getting serious. He was patient and kind, and he made me feel safe. He was the first person I had ever felt like I could be my complete self with, without fear of judgment. And I was pulling away from my friends. I started making excuses to skip wine and wine night. The constant negativity was draining. Their casual cruelty towards men, and towards anyone who didn't subscribe to their worldview, had started to feel like a poison. They noticed, of course. The passive-aggressive texts started. "Missed you tonight. Hope your boyfriend is letting you out of the house. Remember us, your friends, the ones you had before you got a man." The final showdown happened at Lauren's birthday brunch. I brought David. I knew it was a risk, like introducing a fluffy bunny to a pit of vipers, but I was tired of hiding him. I was proud of him. The girls were polite. A cold, razor-thin politeness that was more insulting than outright rudeness. They asked him sterile, interview-style questions about his job and his family. Jessica kept trying to bait him into a debate about politics. Maya asked him to explain a complex IT concept, then smirked when his explanation went over her head. Lauren mostly just ignored him and talked about a guy from her gym who had looked at her twice. David, bless his heart, handled it with grace. He was friendly, he was engaging, he refused to be rattled. The final straw came when David went to the bathroom. The moment he was out of earshot, Jessica leaned across the table. "Okay, for real," she said, her voice low and conspiratorial. "What's the deal with him? He's a bit vanilla, isn't he? Are you really happy?" "I am happy," I said, my voice firm. "He's a good person." "He's nice," Maya said, using her fingers as air quotes. "Nice is what you call a guy you have no sexual chemistry with. At least he's not ghosting me or sending me unsolicited pictures of his junk," I snapped back. Lauren sighed. "I just want more for you, Anon. You deserve a man who gives you butterflies, not a man who helps you set up your Wi-Fi router." That was it. "You know what he does," I said, my voice shaking with a rage that had been simmering for months. "He listens to me. He supports my career. He makes me laugh. He doesn't see me as a project or an accessory or a problem to be solved. He just loves me." I looked around the table at their stunned, angry faces. "You guys don't know how to be happy for me because you don't know how to be happy for yourselves. You're addicted to the drama. You thrive on the misery. You say you want a good man, but when one is standing right in front of you, you do everything you can to tear him down because a stable, healthy relationship is a threat to your entire identity. You're not single because all men are trash," I said, my voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "You're single because you're bitter. You're hypocrites. And you're so terrified of getting hurt that you sabotage any chance of happiness before it even has a chance to begin." Silence. Thick, suffocating silence. Jessica's face was a mask of fury. "Get out," she hissed. David came back to the table, sensing the tension. "Is everything all right?" he asked, looking at me with concern. I stood up, grabbed my purse, and took his hand. "We're leaving," I said. That was the last time I ever spoke to them. There were no angry voicemails, no long, explanatory emails. The friendship just dissolved. It was a house of cards built on a foundation of shared negativity, and I had just pulled out the bottom card. It hurt. It was like losing a limb. These women had been my family for a decade, but it was also a relief. It was like I had been walking around with a backpack full of rocks, and I had finally allowed myself to put it down. My life is quieter now, calmer. My Fridays are no longer filled with wine and whining. They're filled with dinner and a movie with David, with taking our dog, a pit bull, rescued by David for a walk, with building a life with a man who is not a project or a status symbol or a source of drama. He's just my partner, my best friend. Every now and then, out of a morbid curiosity, I'll look at my old friend's social media. It's the same old story. Jessica is posting memes about being a strong, independent woman who doesn't need a man. Maya is posting thirst traps from another trip to some tropical location, complaining in the captions about the poor quality of the local men. Lauren is sharing screenshots of her latest dating app horror story. They are still in the fortress, still in the cage they built for themselves. They're still waiting for a fairy tale that will never come, because they keep setting fire to every knight who dares to approach. I used to feel pity for them. Now I just feel a distant, sad sort of peace. I dodged a bullet, not from a man with a wrinkled shirt or a Toyota Camry. I dodged a bullet from a lifetime of lonely, bitter Fridays.